Hello, everyone. Good day, and welcome again to our SS2 Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics. And for today's discussion, we are going to talk about Chapter 4, How a Society is Organized. So, as we all know, class, a society is an entity that allows individuality yet provides space for other individuals and groups to pursue mutual goals and aspirations, right? So, this chapter class explains how society is organized and highlights the particular group composing it. So, you will appreciate the fact that we are all unique. There are multiple things like ideas, opinions, beliefs, principles, and values that we share with others. So to start our lesson, okay. So groups within, this is the first topic for this chapter. So class, diba? We all know also that we share certain similarities with the people around us. For example, in your case, you share similar things with your classmates, and just like individual member or members of a society, have some commonalities with other members. So these similarities could be basis for the establishment of deeper and more meaningful relationships. Yeah, so even um, ancient philosopher Plato believed that man is a social animal, right? So people spend a great deal of their time with various groups. And, young people meet what we call barcadas. So we usually meet in a mall, in a certain tourist spots, or just everywhere. No, then we also have some reunions, gathering. Um, we may form a certain group for a certain celebrity. If we, when it comes to fan based, right, or any artist, and then people also form a group for a certain sports, right? So, in other words, we people know how to organize a certain group, organize a certain society. With that, we have what we call social group, everyone. So, when we say social group, it is a collection of individuals who have relations with one another that make them interdependent to some significant degree. Okay? So, what is interdependent, everyone? So, let's define what interdependence is. Okay. So basically, when we say interdependence, this is a necessary condition that exists within social groups because it is what enables its members to pursue shared goals or promote common values and principles. Okay? So again, a social group class has interdependence. Now, interdependence class is also what differentiates a social group from what we call social aggregate. Okay, so when we say aggregate or social aggregate, it talks about a mere collection of people within a particular place and time. Okay, so to further understand the difference of social group and social aggregate, so we have here an example. For instance, friends hanging out in a mall, that is an example of social group. Why? Because you are with your friend. No? You know your friend, you interact, you communicate, you have conversation. Diba? So you really have a relationship with a person. And you may depend on one another in different aspects. So that's an example of social group, everyone. On the other hand, an example to social aggregate is the rest of the people inside the mall. Because you don't know all of those people inside the mall, everyone. You're not friends with them, right? So that is an example of social aggregate because you only occupy with other people at the same time and space, which is inside the mall. All right? Okay. So I hope you understand the difference, class. Just probably remember um, that not all, I mean, when it comes to social group, okay, just remember, no, not all social groups are social aggregates, but not all social aggregates are social groups. Because again, a social aggregate is simply a collection of individuals who can be at the same place at any given time, like a crowd inside the mall. But a social group is a collection of individuals who have relations to one another that make them interdependent to some significant degree. So interdependence, everyone, is a necessary condition of social groups since it is what enables its members to pursue shared goals or promote common values and principles. So that's why most of the time, face-to-face group like barcadas, friends, family members, so they are part of social group. Yes. Another example for social aggregate is when you create a Facebook group of fans of a certain celebrity or a certain fan. So if you are creating a certain group, Facebook group for a certain celebrity, you don't know or you're not really acquainted with all of the members inside that Facebook group, right? Yeah, because the members maybe are coming from different places, coming from different countries, so you don't have deeper relationship, you don't have any interdependence. So that's an example for social aggregate, everyone. Unless you're creating a Facebook group for your class section, and of course, your classmates and your teachers who are also members of that Facebook group. So that's not a social aggregate anymore. That's social group. Okay, so I hope you class um, understand the difference of the two. So then let's proceed to, okay, this one. Alright, may pause na sana akong video, no? Anyway, so groups within. So we have what we call primary group and secondary group, everyone. So let's try to identify them and, differentiate the two. Okay, so when we say primary group, no, this is small, intimate, and less specialized group whose members engage in face-to-face and emotion-based interactions over an extended period of time. So primary groups class are first groups where an individual experiences his or her initial encounter with social affinity and belongingness. So the best example for primary group is your family members, right? That is your very first group um, with your existence in this world, no? Your family members. And then another is your close friends, your barcadas. Um, your work-related peers can also be a primary group, everyone, because you can form a bond and harmonious relationship with your workmate, but not all workmates, no? Your classmates, so of course, they can also be primary groups because you can be good friends with your classmates, right? Or even in certain church groups like that, no? As long as there is um, um, emotional affection. So one is siya ang sa primary group. On the other hand, the secondary group, um, this one is engaged in impersonal and objective oriented relationship. Okay, take note, objective oriented relationship. So this one is larger and less intimate. So the level of interaction is not deep and not significant. not all the time. No? So members of the secondary group treat members as merely means to achieve his or her immediate objectives. That's why it's called objective oriented. For example, employees treat their colleagues or co-workers as a secondary group since they know that they need each other to cooperate with one another to achieve certain goals in the workplace. Yes, so you want to achieve a certain goal in a workplace, so you have this kind of objective oriented relationship. So that's an example of secondary group. Okay. Um, Yes, another example can be professional relations like between the lawyers and clients, doctors and patients. So there is no emotional affection to that. You just formed a certain group based on objective, okay? Objective of consulting your concerns to those professionals. And those professionals have this objective to assist you or help you. Okay, so that's for the secondary group. So again, we have what we call primary group and secondary group. Now let's proceed to in groups and out groups. Are you in or out? Okay, so for this one, everyone, this is another relevant approach in understanding the characteristics of social groups. Um, that is the self-categorization theory. So when we say self-categorization theory, so this one is when people's appreciation of their group members is influenced by their perception towards people who are not members of their group. Okay, and that is why for the self-categorization theory, uh, in group and out groups terms are created. Okay, so let's differentiate the two. So when we say in groups, so um, these are groups or group which one belongs and with which one feels sense of identity. You are in the group. You are part of the group. Okay, you share the same goals, opinions, beliefs, and principles with other members. So you are part of the group. On the other hand, out group is when this is for the group which one does not belong and which he or she may feel sense of competitiveness or hostility. Yeah, so that's out group. So you're not part of the group. Okay, so you may have sense of competitiveness. You compete with that, other group. All right. So, yeah, the best example to this one is in your class. So you belong to a certain section. So you are in group, the whole class, the your classmates, with the teacher. For example, your strand is gas, so you are in group because you share the same strand with your classmates. But for the out group, so it's gonna be another strand. So your out groups can be STEM students, UMS, or even ABM. Okay, you're not part of their group because you don't have the same interests or goals. No, you have your own reason why you have chosen GAS. All right, and other students in our school also have their own reasons. So that's the best example for in group and out group. Or even when you form a certain group or club, mga club members, for example, music club. Okay, so they are inclined to musical instruments, to songs, about composing, or even singing. There's also a club for dancing or cheer dance club. Yeah, so they're not into singing, but they're into dancing, so they have another group. So which one you belong, you are in group. Okay, and the other group is considered as your out group. Okay, so class, no, for every individual distinguishing between his or her in groups and out groups, this is actually essential in developing his or her identity and self-worth. Yes, so again, you will have sense of identity. All right. Okay. So class, um, social scientist class identifies several characteristics of in groups. Okay, number one, they said that members of in-group devise ways to distinguish themselves from non-members. All right. Example, nursing students are different from engineering students based on their uniform, books, subjects, and others. Right? So they distinguish themselves from non-members. Second, members of in-group display positive attitude and behaviors towards their fellow members for the most part, while they may exhibit negative attitudes and even form negative views towards members of out-group. And I'm sure makarelate mo ani na mo experience like you are too competitive, so you wanted to, maybe there are some discrimination siguro sa other, sa outgroup nimo nga imong consider. Okay. But anyway, you will be able to differentiate your differences of the other group. Right then. Okay, number three, differences with non-members could transform into feelings of competition and even hostility. Yeah, so you will have sense of competitiveness. So makikompete ka, no? Something like that. But sometimes, you may compete or you have the sense of competitiveness to challenge yourself, you know, and to identify your strengths and even weaknesses in a certain group that can be useful class. All right. Okay, so those are characteristics of in groups. Okay, let's proceed to the next slide. Okay, so class, we also have what we call networks. So networks refers to the structure of relationships between social actors or groups. Okay, so interconnections, ties, and linkages between people, their group, and the larger social institutions to which they belong. Okay, so di ba class, individuals often have overlapping memberships with complex web of relationships, right? And this one leads to complex interaction among groups in society. So that's why um, this term network is conceived by sociologists to understand the complex world of social groups. Okay. So because again, diba, they said refers to structure of relationships between social actors or group. So in the age of internet class, a good example of networks are provided by social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and others. Okay, ano na network man. So one can instantly map his or her own social network through his or her accounts in these online platforms of communication. So it's much easier for you to communicate with your social group or group members in your in-group because of networks. You may have a lot of social groups, everyone. For example, ikaw, you have your social group in school, and that's your classmate. You have your social group in the neighborhood, that's your barkadas, for example. You also have another social group for a certain dance club. So, for instance, to look abog imong social groups or daghan pa jud ana. So it's going to be easier for you to connect to each of your social group, no, without some confusions as to the members because of what we call networks. Okay? Because you have your interconnections, linkages, and nowadays we are using social media platforms, so dili ta maglibog no nga kanida siya kay ako ni siyang member sa kaninga social group siya lahi sad siya. So it's much easier for you to map out okay your members. So I hope you get what we call network class because that is really very useful. Okay, in forming an organization. Okay, now we also have what we call reference group, everyone. So a reference group is a group to which an individual compares himself or herself. Okay, so it has a strong influence on an individual's beliefs, values, behavior, and attitudes. Okay, so usually, um, those who you consider out group can be a reference group because, because diba, when you consider a group as an out group, you don't belong to that group, so usually you compare yourself to them. So by the time that you compare yourself to them, you will, or I mean, they will become a reference group. Okay, so I hope that yes, I hope that you also do this one properly when you have a certain reference group. So be logical and um, when you do some critique siguro sa other group, at least you have to avoid discrimination, right? Okay. But because anyway, having a reference group, that's fine when you do that because you will be able again to know more about yourself as to why you don't belong to that group. You know that you have some weakness or weaknesses that is basically their strength, you know. So because you have to recognize class that you cannot become a member of all the social groups around here. So that's why we have what we call out group. Okay, you're not perfect. You don't know anything, everything. So nakikita yung mga things na we know, we are interested about, and also some disinterests or um, things that you are not really capable of doing, right? And again, that is reference group, everyone. Okay, so for this lesson, no? Actually, this is the last part na sa ato ang lesson. So let's recall shortly before we end. Yeah, so in this chapter, we talked about, where is the first one? Okay, we talked about social group, and then we differentiate social group from what we call social aggregate, right? And as we all know, the main difference of social group and social aggregate is interdependence. So social group has interdependence while aggregate doesn't really have. All right. So examples, yes. And then this one, we talked about primary groups and secondary groups, right? Yeah, so again, primary group class, no, it's where an individual first experience social affinity and belongingness, right? And for the second group are those with whom people do not necessarily interact that much. So the connection between members are less personal, less emotional because of limited face-to-face interactions with them. No? So that is the secondary group. Okay. And then we also identified self-categorization theory that creates what we call in-groups and out-groups. Okay, so I know all of you have your own in-groups and you also have a particular out group. No? So again, in group class, a group to which one belongs, while an out group is a group of which one is not a member. So it's very easy to identify. Mhm. So just remember lang sa siguro class na that um, the key differences when one is either a member of an in group or an out group. So, okay. So actually katong characteristics, diba? Yes. So for the in-group, yeah, members devise ways to distinguish themselves, display positive attitude towards fellow members, but a little bit negative to the other group. For the out-group, then differences with non-members could transform into feelings of competition and even hostility. Right? Okay. And next is all about networks. Okay. So again, a network is a structure of relationship between social actors or groups. So networks are interconnections, ties, linkages between people, their group, larger social institutions which they belong. So in other words, let's know a network provides the bigger pool from which people draw their um, possible sources of identity, self-esteem, and even self-actualization. Okay? Yes. And lastly, the reference group. Okay, reference group is a group of individuals that people look up to and identify with because they want to be like the members of the reference group, or maybe not. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of our discussion for the chapter 4. So I hope you um, understood our lesson. But if you have some questions and clarification, you may ask me that one during our face-to-face class. So that's the end of our chapter 4, how a society is organized. And see you again for the next recorded discussion, everyone. Goodbye, class, and have a great day ahead. Bye.